Okay guys, it's time to write our conclusion. Now, as you may recall from the first video, the conclusion does not have a strict structure the same way as the introduction and the paragraphs do. The conclusion has general guidelines, rules, some particular things you need to remember to put in the conclusion and some things not to put in the conclusion. So let's begin and just have a quick look at the rules again. Rule number 1, you are not allowed to introduce new ideas or information. So what this means is, it means that your introduction and your paragraphs should cover all of the facts, the ideas, the reasons, everything to support your thesis statement should be there in your introduction and your paragraphs. Your conclusion should be to summarize and to restate and to remind, not to introduce new information. Okay? If you do introduce new information into your conclusion, it will not sound like a conclusion, and the reader will think that you are missing a conclusion. That's why it's important. You need to conclude and not to introduce anything new. Okay? Rule number 2, this is the part of your essay that you want the reader to remember if they forget everything else. In other words, make sure to include all of your important points, your persuasive arguments, a summary of your main ideas, as you can see in the next point. Restate your thesis statement, summarize your main ideas. So that means tell the reader again what your answer is, although in different words, just so it doesn't sound repetitive, and remind the reader your reasons for your answer. Next, include some emotion, some of your personality, something that gives the essay and the conclusion a little bit more flavor, a little bit more uniqueness, just so it doesn't sound so robotic, like a robot. And then just think about how you would finish an important speech. We usually finish speeches with something powerful, something emotional, something to get the reader's attention and make the reader feel something. And that way the speech, and in this case the essay, remains in the mind of the reader. Okay. For us, let's see the plan. So we do have 4 boxes. I recommend using these boxes for your conclusion, although you don't need to use these boxes as strictly as you do in the introduction and for your paragraphs. But I would recommend using them, or if you want, playing around with them and changing them a little bit if you have a better way of doing it. But I think this is a good way to make sure your conclusion includes all the necessary components. So I'm restating my thesis statement by saying the best way to help homeless people is to get them off the street. Simple. Get them off the street. That's the best way to help homeless people. That's a better solution than giving homeless people money. Get them off the street. What this means is, my summary explains, summary of my topic sentences, summary of my ideas. This requires long-term policies that provide jobs and housing. Now, if you remember, jobs and housing were basically our 2 paragraphs. Jobs was the topic sentence of the first paragraph, and housing the topic sentence of the second paragraph. So here, I'm restating my thesis statement, and then reminding the reader of my 2 important ideas that support my thesis statement. I'm then putting in a human element, a personal element, something with a bit of personality, by saying people often choose to give money because this is a quick and easy way to remove the guilt that we feel when we walk past a homeless person. So I think we have all experienced this feeling when we walk past a homeless person and we get a sense of guilt, a sense of shame. We want to help, but we don't know how, or there's that feeling of hopelessness and that feeling of, wow, this person really has a horrible life and my life is not so bad. So what I'm saying here in this human element is, I feel that people give money more to help their own conscience, to make themselves feel better, than to really help the person, because real solutions must be long-term solutions. So this is the human element, it's to get the reader's attention. I then close by saying, if we truly want to help, and not just to feel better about ourselves, We need to pressure the government to create long-term solutions. So this is a very nice way to close the conclusion and therefore close the essay by saying, if we want to help, let's do this. End of essay. Okay? Let's see how this plan becomes the conclusion in its final form. Okay? The best way to help homeless people is to get them off the street. This requires long-term policies that provide jobs and public housing. In my opinion, people often choose to give money to the homeless because it is a quick and easy way to remove the guilt that we feel when we walk past a homeless person in the street. It is a way of telling ourselves, I have done my part to help. But if we truly want to help, and not just to feel better about ourselves, we need to pressure the government to create long-term solutions. So there you have the conclusion. Just to be clear, I'm saying my topic sentence, I apologize, I'm saying my thesis statement again. The best way to help homeless people is to get them off the street. In other words, I don't agree with the question. I don't agree that giving money is the best way to help. This is the best way to help. So I'm saying my thesis statement again, but in different words. Maybe a little bit stronger this time than the way I said it in my introduction. I then summarize my topic sentences. I summarize my ideas by saying long-term policies, jobs and public housing, put in my human or personal element to get the reader's attention, something that the reader has to think about. The reader maybe has to stop and think, have I done this? Do I also do this? Is this true? And that way it gets the reader's attention. Okay? And then closing by saying, if we want to help and not just to feel better about ourselves, we need to pressure the government to create long-term solutions. Because really, at the end of the day, what true solutions require is public pressure on the government to create policies or to create long-term solutions. This last sentence is a really good way to close because it's a way of saying, if you forget everything else that I've said, remember this. This is the way I'm closing my argument. It's the way I'm closing my essay. If we want to help and not just to feel better, we need to pressure the government to create long-term solutions. Okay, guys, there you have the conclusion. See you in the next video.